Hey, Aimlabs is free, buddy. If someone's told you that in game before and you didn't really know what they meant, I have bad news for you. You might be in need of this video. But the great news is, while Aimlabs is actually free, it's also the best aim trainer for 4 specific reasons. As always, I'll have specific daily routines towards the end of the video, this time catered towards the 4th reason I'll go over, creating aim that's transferable from game to game. I'm NotoriousDuB. This time I want you guys to comment your main game under the pinned comment down below so I know how to cater my next videos, and I want to thank you guys for being here. Number 1, form development is king. Whether you run track, play basketball, baseball, or aim a mouse, starting with an efficient foundation of good form is priority number 1, and that's what sets Aimlabs apart. When flicking, you want smooth, straight lines from target to target without overshooting, undershooting, and clicking as soon as your crosshair slides over the target, and in one synchronized movement from your arm and your wrist. And line trace is the best scenario I've found in all of aim training. If you watch all my videos, you're probably tired of hearing me talk about line trace, but the scenario is a must play, because in all of skill development, without feedback, you cannot possibly improve. How would you possibly know whether you're doing good or bad? And line trace, the feedback comes in the form of a giant straight line from your previous target to your current one, and you only get points by moving along that line. And to my knowledge, there is no aim trainer with a proper substitute. Just for reference, if I had to put a number to this, I would say 2 people completely untrained pick up a shooter game that involves flicking. One has done 5 hours of line trace over the course of 2 weeks and the other hasn't. The one who has done line trace would improve about twice as fast because they have good form developed. Now when it comes to tracking, you want smooth sweeps following your target, speeding up and slowing down to stay directly centered and in perfect sync with your target. Apparently tracking training is for the masochists. Aim trainers are filled with tracking scenarios that are either way too difficult or way too easy, but sphere track is very close to perfect. It's a medium speed with smooth strafes, controllable direction changes, and verticality. And sphere track is a great tracking scenario from the beginning of your tracking training all the way until your pretty elite level. If you're a really low sense person, feel free to do the lower degree sphere track. And if you play a game with absolutely no verticality and really don't want to train it, even though I recommend it anyway to make you a more rounded player, swap to the strafe track scenario. And finally, in microadjusting, you want perfect tracks or snappy straight lines just like in the flicking and tracking scenarios, but in about a 2-inch square around your crosshair. And the best way to develop great form in this is with micro shot precision. The targets get smaller as you go faster, so it's self-pacing, and the targets are within a micro-correcting range. Just focus on slow and controlled, perfect movements. Alright, number 2, if you want to compete in video gaming, stop and do this scenario right now. Audio-spatial precision. If you're not able to clear about 75% with this pretty consistently, this should be your new focus before you ever even go back into gaming. Being able to audibly pinpoint locations is vital for performance in almost all games. I know you spectate your teammates and or IRL friends just like I do, and you're flabbergasted when it seems like they have their headset on backwards. And sometimes we might even be that person whether we like to admit it or not. And although this isn't something that you have to do forever, every headset in person is a little bit different, and making sure you can pinpoint how your headset gives you spatial information will at least get you to the top 50th percentile alone and stop you from getting lost in games and allow you to actually start improving. Number 3, in the personal training and skill development community, the most important part of our programming is either progressive overload or muscle confusion. They both do the same thing. They provide a new stimulus to the muscle, which is viewed as more difficult than what we were doing before, which forces the body to adapt to become better at what we're training it to do. Very simple. And Aimlabs naturally has muscle confusion and or progressive overload naturally embedded in it with their precision, speed, ultimate, and standard variants of key scenarios. It doesn't need to be overly complicated or variable. You're just increasing the stress on your muscles over time. And by doing slightly different scenarios than you're used to, you're doing the same thing. So here's a little bit of boring science for you. Your central nervous system is the key factor in all of this stuff, and it can handle a specific amount of stress in a day and be able to recover from it. And that's different from person to person, and it is actually developable over time to be able to handle a higher and higher workload while you stress it. So to properly incorporate progressive overload, you want to slowly increase one variable of your training at a time. Either the speed at which you hit your targets, the difficulty of your scenarios, or the amount of reps that you're getting in. You just want to increase something to make it a little bit more difficult. For beginners, you're fine not changing anything really for like 2 to 4 weeks. And for the super advanced aimers, you want to be able to work with these variables every workout. And it's great to be able to self-manage that, do it mentally, focus on hitting headshots, yada yada. But Aimlabs gives you the tools to just click on another scenario that's still synaptically familiar, but different enough to promote growth. Some standout scenarios to work with the variables on are microshot, sphere track, and strafe track. But everyone's different. If you find a scenario that fits what you want to improve on that has variables, then work with that. But I think these are the big three for improvement in Aimlabs, and they allow you to continuously keep your routines variable. That way you can keep incorporating progressive overload and or muscle confusion. Now, number 4, there's been this myth that pops up in the AIM community from time to time that AIM just isn't transferable either from game to game or from AIM trainers to games, which really just isn't true. It's just that each game has small variations in the different types of aim that you perform, which means when swapping from game to game, your weak point in aiming that you might not even recognize might be the main movement in the new game, and that's what's getting highlighted all the time, and the only cure really is to become a well-rounded aimer. Now, if you really broke it back to its roots, there are 6 distinct movements in aiming you could probably cover everything in, and proficiency in all of those types of aiming will carry over either from scenario to scenario and game to game with about 20 minutes of focused adjustment from your brain. The problem comes in when you realize that multitasking is a myth, so when you come into a new game, there's now a million more data points for you to parse through, and only once you're really comfortable in the new game and all of the new stimulus becomes second nature to understand, are you able to free up enough brain power for you to start performing at the level of aim that you've established previously. And the main reason I love Aimlab is because it has enough small variation in scenario to easily pinpoint all 6 aiming motions in isolation. So here's a quick suggestion for each. For flicking, any of the spider shot tasks are great. It's a basic flick developer that is variable enough to work with any skill level. Tracking, like I said before, there's virtually no reason to play anything besides sphere track until you're at a really high level of tracking, so stick with it. Microshot is in a similar vein where microshot precision is the GOAT scenario and is the go-to really no matter what skill level you're at. For smoothing, you have circle track. Smoothing is all about smooth sweeps with the mouse and staying locked onto the center of the target, and circle track is a great scenario that isolates this. Swiping is difficult because it involves huge swipes with your mouse and then being able to find your target and beginning the aim sequence. And there's not a ton of scenarios that will train it, but Spider Shot 180/Ultimate will do the trick. And finally, to incorporate focused verticality, Grid Shot Ultimate works well. I typically don't like the longer flicks on fast-paced scenarios, but verticality is so rare in games that when it's necessary, it's a gigantic weak spot. So a little dedicated practice goes a long way. Finally, this is designed to be the routine you follow to become a top 1% aimer within about a month of playing whatever new game you want to play. Aimlabs has a lot to work with, so I'm splitting it up into 2 days of training because focused training is far better than hitting a tiny amount of everything per day. Day 1, we're going to be working on flicking, microadjusting, and verticality. And day 2, we're working on tracking, smoothing, and swiping. I'm keeping the scenarios nice and short with around 15 minutes twice a day being the goal, because by performing the exercises before you play, you optimize your performance in game, and by doing them closer to when you go to sleep, you optimize your improvement because you learn things that you do before bed faster than anything. And we always start with a little bit of form work, so line trace is always going to be the starter task, and you only hit diminishing returns when skill training after about 60 minutes of sufficiently difficult training. So feel free to repeat these routines up to 4 times a day to accelerate your improvement even more. Of course, I'm going to have links and or playlist codes to all of this stuff in the description, and I want to know what your main game is, so drop that down below if you don't mind so I know what to focus my content on. As always, the best way to support me is a like and a comment. Subscribe for more of the Science Explained series that I'm working on this channel, and I want to thank you for being here. The goal is for me to be able to focus solely on these videos for a while, and I can't do that without you guys. So thank you. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Peace out.